If you're an academic and you're still relying on ChatGPT alone to read, write, and understand research papers, I want you to pause for a second. Not because ChatGPT is bad, but because there's a much better way to do this. In today's video, I'm going to show you how to read, understand, and take notes like a PhD or like a seasoned academic using AI the right way. This approach is easy, fast, and efficient, and there's nothing complicated or intimidating about it. I've broken this down into a simple 4-step reading method that you can start using immediately. Step 1 is what I call the 30-second read, and this is where speed really matters. An efficient PhD student never reads a research paper from the very beginning in a slow, linear way. That might sound strange at first, but it's true. The goal of the first read is not to understand everything. It's to quickly decide whether a paper is worth your time and mental energy. This first skim can literally take just 30 seconds. You glance at the abstract, scan the introduction, look at the keywords, and jump straight to the results and discussion. You are trying to get the shape of the paper, not the details. Traditionally, people do this manually, flipping pages, scrolling fast, and hoping they don't miss something important. Instead of doing all of that by hand, you can now use AI tools like Anara to make this process faster and much more effective. Anara is an AI workspace built specifically for scientists, students, and researchers. It helps you understand research papers, collect information, and interact with complex text in a way that is both efficient and ethical for academic work. This is important because speed alone is not enough. You also want to make sure you are working responsibly. When you open Anara for the first time, the platform is surprisingly easy to use. The layout is clean, intuitive, and not overwhelming. Even if you've never used it before, it usually takes only 5 to 10 minutes to feel comfortable navigating around. The first thing you want to do is upload a research paper that you're interested in understanding. This could be something new or something you've been meaning to read for a while. In my case, I already have a large library because I've been using Anara for years. I have papers I've read, papers I want to read, and papers I've partially explored. I simply choose one file that I want to focus on. One powerful feature is that you can chat not only with papers, but also with notes you've made in the past or even videos you've uploaded. You can interact with almost anything in your library. I asked Anara to summarize the paper and identify the key findings. Within seconds, it produced a clear summary that explained what the paper was about and highlighted the main results. This immediately helped me decide whether the paper was worth reading in more detail. Even if I already knew it was important, this quick overview gave me the context I needed to continue reading with purpose instead of confusion. In this example, the paper focused on muscle physiology and deltoid movement. Anara filtered the core ideas from a long 18-page paper in seconds, something that would normally take a huge amount of time. I then asked for the top 5 keywords from the document. This step is incredibly useful, especially when you're new to a topic. Keywords help you understand the language of the field and make it easier to search for related literature later. Having clear definitions inside the same workspace also means you don't have to jump between tabs, Google searches, or different AI tools. Another feature I really appreciate is the ability to highlight sections of the text and add comments directly to them. This annotation tool allows you to connect your questions and insights directly to the paper itself. You're not just chatting with AI anymore. You're actively building understanding inside the document. These highlights and notes stay there, ready for you to return to later. That makes the quick read not just fast, but meaningful. And once you've done this initial skim, you're ready to move on with real clarity instead of guessing your way forward. Step 2 is where active interrogation really begins, and this is the moment you stop reading passively and start thinking like a PhD. At this stage, you are no longer just trying to understand what the paper says on the surface. You are reading with a critical mindset, questioning every claim, every decision, and every conclusion the authors make. You constantly ask why they chose a certain method, how their approach compares to others, what assumptions they are making, and what might happen if those assumptions were changed. This process of breaking down arguments and examining them from multiple angles is one of the core skills of academic thinking, and it is what separates simple reading from real research understanding. This is also where Anara becomes incredibly powerful. Instead of keeping all these questions in your head or scribbling notes that later feel messy and disconnected, you can directly ask deeper questions and push beyond what is written at face value. For example, instead of asking what methods were used, you can ask how the methods in this paper differ from those used in another paper you have already read. That single question instantly moves you into comparison, evaluation, and synthesis, which are key academic skills. What I really appreciate here is how Anara handles these conversations. The language it uses is clear and easy to follow, even when the ideas themselves are complex and high level. This makes it possible to understand advanced reasoning without already being an expert in the field. In my case, Anara created a clean comparison table that clearly showed differences between two papers, along with detailed explanations of why each research team made certain choices, how they evaluated their results, and how they interpreted their findings. That table alone can be copied, reused, and turned directly into notes or early drafts of academic writing. You can then take this even further by interrogating specific sections of the paper. Instead of discussing the entire document, you can highlight a single paragraph or statement and ask targeted questions about it. For example, if the introduction mentions human muscle biology, you can ask how that claim relates to human muscle biology or human muscle skeletal movement concerns. This allows you to dig deeper into specific ideas, build stronger arguments for your literature review, and even identify gaps or weaknesses in existing research. This kind of focused questioning is what pushes your thinking to the next level and helps you truly read and take notes like a PhD. The third step is smart annotation and note-taking, and this is where reading really turns into understanding. If you have ever done serious academic work, you know the stereotype is true. PhD students highlight everything, scribble in the margins, write notes in notebooks, on sticky notes, and sometimes on random pieces of paper. When I was doing my PhD, there was no AI to help with this, so I had notebooks full of messy annotations and half-finished thoughts scattered everywhere. It worked, but it was slow, and it was very easy to lose important ideas. Today, you can do this in a much cleaner and more powerful way using a tool like Anara. You can annotate directly, take notes, add citations, and keep everything in one organized place. At any moment, you can take information from a chat and turn it into a proper note that you control. Once a note is created, you can edit it, refine your wording, add references, include links, and even turn parts of what you read into clear quotes. This changes the way you interact with information. You are no longer just asking Anara for answers and passively reading them. You are actively building your own collection of ideas, written in your own words, supported by evidence. That process gives you far more control and helps the material stick. You can also go back to your library at any time and see everything in one place. All your notes, past and present, your chats, and your documents are there and easy to access. You can open an old note, connect it to something new, or start a completely blank note and begin writing from scratch. One of the most powerful features is that you can add citations while you are writing. If you have written a sentence and want to support it, you can search for relevant research papers from external sources or from your own library. You can then add those papers, cite them properly, and link ideas together. Over time, you start pulling evidence from notes you have written, papers you have read, and trusted sources online. Everything comes together into one strong, well-supported note that you can later turn into an essay, a section of a literature review, or the foundation for a new idea you are trying to understand. The final step, step 4, is knowledge synthesis, and this is where everything truly comes together. This is the real PhD superpower. It's also the most difficult part of the entire process, because this is where you stop thinking about individual papers and start thinking at a higher level. Instead of asking what one paper says, you're now asking what the whole body of research is telling you. This is the stage where you begin synthesizing information to build something meaningful, like a literature review, a thesis chapter, or a research paper. What I've shown you so far might have been based on one paper at a time, but in reality, you'll repeat that process across 15 or even 20 papers. Once you've done that, the real work begins, which is bringing all of those ideas together into a single clear structure that you can actually write from. This is where Anara becomes incredibly powerful. One of the ways I like to do this is by creating groups or folders of related papers. Looking at individual papers is important, but comparing sources is where deeper academic thinking happens. When you place related papers into a single folder, you're creating a focused research environment. You're no longer jumping between unrelated ideas. You're intentionally narrowing your attention to a specific topic, question, or theme, which is exactly how strong academic writing is developed. Once those papers are grouped together, you can then chat directly with that folder. This is a small feature, but it completely changes the way you work. Instead of asking questions across your entire library or pulling in outside information, you can ask questions that are answered only using the papers inside that folder. This gives you full control over your sources and removes a huge amount of noise. For example, I can ask something like, identify the common themes and contradictions across these papers. That question alone would normally take days or even weeks of careful reading and note comparison. But here, Anara quickly compares the arguments, highlights where authors agree, and points out where they disagree. Now, this doesn't replace your thinking. It gives you a strong starting point. From there, you can dive deeper, check the sources, and refine your understanding. But as a first pass, it's incredibly effective for building the foundation of a literature review or an outline. Once I've reached this stage, the last thing I do before writing is ask Anara to create a bullet point outline based only on the papers in that folder. At this point, all the reading is done. I'm ready to write, and what used to take an enormous amount of time now happens in a fraction of it. The outline it produces is usually very comprehensive. It includes an introduction, key mechanisms or themes, discussions around communities or systems, suggested case studies, and a clear conclusion. From there, I can focus on specific sections, like the conclusion, and ask Anara to recommend the strongest papers to cite. It doesn't just give random suggestions. It identifies the most relevant paper, especially where gaps in the literature exist, and then provides alternative recommendations if I want to explore further. This entire process allows you to write with confidence, clarity, and structure, and that is what truly separates surface-level reading from PhD-level thinking. Honestly, this is one of those moments where it really feels like the rules of the game have changed. I've been using AI tools for years now, but every time I work with something like Anara, I'm reminded of how much these tools can actually raise the level of our work. They don't make us lazy, they help us become better scientists, better academics, better students, and better researchers. They give us back time, and that time is what allows us to focus on the parts of research that really matter, like thinking deeply, asking better questions, and building strong ideas instead of getting stuck in busy work. What tools like Anara really give you is the ability to move faster without losing quality. You can read papers more efficiently, understand complex ideas more clearly, analyze information with less friction, and get to insight much quicker than before. Instead of spending hours feeling overwhelmed, you can spend that time actually learning and creating. That shift alone can make a huge difference in how research feels day to day. I've mentioned Anara quite a few times on this channel for a reason. If you want to try it out for yourself, I've left a link in the description below, and if you've already tried it or you're currently using it, I'd genuinely love to hear from you. Let me know in the comments what's worked well for you or how you're using it in your own studies or research. Hearing that feedback really helps me make better videos and recommend tools that actually make a real difference in your daily work. Thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to check the description below, and I hope to see you in the next video.